Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Revenge Career. This is the podcast that turns your worst work nightmares into the sweetest revenge. In case you've forgotten, I'm JT.
And I'm Dani.
What is going on with your delayed reaction there, sister? We're gonna.
I think my Wi-Fi's on the fritz today, JT.
I love it. I'm like, wait, podcast people are gonna think I'm crazy because I then just have this pregnant pause sitting there. So I'm glad you're there. We'll monitor your tech issues. I'm wearing my tech outfit today, right? We were joking about this. Like I have my tech hoodie on, everyone. If you're not watching the video, you're just listening. I have a tech hoodie on. So I'm tech support today. I love it. Okay.
Silicon Valley of you.
Yeah, right. So let's talk about Dropbox, my friend. We've got some cool shout outs today. We're not even doing career cringe because there's just been so many sad things in the news. I think we need to stay positive. So let's talk about Dropbox.
Yeah. So found this article again, guys, just Google things. But in terms of what's going on at Dropbox is they are about to pay a very substantial amount of money, 79 million actually, to shrink. It's huge. Speaking of San Fran office, and the CEO, Drew Houston, actually says that the reason they're doing this is because return to office, that push that all other employers are making, will fail. So he is putting the money where his mouth is for sure, and he's really pushing the idea that Dropbox will be a remote-only company. I love this because I think that there is this huge idea around, especially the economy right now and real estate, obviously, and commercial sides, that people need to return to the office. They need to remain, credible. They need to come in and they need to touch base with their managers. Their managers are micromanaging possibly. And there's just this idea around the idea of returning to work and why you have to, and that productivity is dropping, which I think is such a poor excuse for returning to the office. I know that we make it work here every single day. We have since the pandemic started. And I really love seeing a large company like this, especially that's showing the fact that it's going to take its remote work and just thrive. And that's the piece here, that they've really transitioned with their real estate company to, sublet the office until then. And then they're going to be out of their contract, within the next couple of years. But again, I'm just super happy for this group. I hope that the Dropbox people are loving the fact that they can stay remote. I think that more companies, on just a personal note, I think that more companies would be better off without making that push of returning to the office, because you're talking about, and I know we had a discussion earlier, JT, about daycare, and we'll get into that here shortly, but it's extremely valuable to have a flexible schedule as an employee. And when you do, you have this power to take back your time. And from an employee standpoint, working remotely allows me to be able to go pick up my son. It allows me to go run to the store really quickly because I forgot milk for dinner, whatever it is. It's just so nice. And then let's just cut out the whole commute thing. That was a nightmare. If you're in the Boston area, you know what I'm talking about. So if you're talking all of those factors, I'm very excited for Dropbox, and I cannot wait to see the data that comes behind this to show that it's working. So I'd love your thoughts on it, JT.
Yeah, so I'm going to play devil's advocate with you on it, because, and it's not to say that I don't love remote work, because we are a remote company, right? But I'm starting to see some other things at the corporate level that are kind of interesting. So first of all, there are companies that are embracing remote work because they're taking a hit now on, office space and whatever, but they understand long term they're going to be able to improve or optimize their employee costs by reducing salaries. If you are one of the companies that is saying, hey, we're only remote, what kind of talent is going to pound down your door to work there? And if you look at supply and demand, if you suddenly have a massive supply of workers that want to work for you, how do those workers start to compete against one another? By lowering their rates. If you think of everybody's a business of one, right? Top talent's going to come to you and say, this matters so much to me to be able to go get that milk, to be able to go get my kid. I'll take the 10% pay cut. Hey, I live in the middle of nowhere. I'm 50% less than the person that you've got living in San Fran. Pick me. And so employers have
true.
started to figure out the short-term hit of canceling out the real estate for the long-term gain, because what's your most expensive thing on your P&L? It's your talent. We're going to be
Your
able to
payroll.
save on the back end long-term, big time. And those are the
Yeah, that's a
conversations
great
they're having
point.
in boardrooms right now. So many people are gung-ho about remote work, and I get it. But if you don't think about how to specialize and make
Mm,
yourself so valuable, you will be a commodity and you will have to play the
mhm.
price game. And nobody wins in the price game, especially you as the business of one. Everyone starts cutting
True.
their prices down. Let's talk about people in other countries who have 1/3 the cost of living we have. You better believe that they
Yeah.
can go and take this job for way less,
Mhm.
right? So again, the companies that are out there right now announcing we'll be, remote forever. They are capitalizing on a trend that's going to enable them to take advantage of it from the talent standpoint. So I just want people to be
Great
thinking
point.
about that. We do not understand the massive impact that AI is going to have on good paying jobs.
Mm,
It's eliminating the need for copywriters. It's eliminating the need for people who used to write stuff out, right? Like just basic jobs and functions are shrinking. Now, will there be new jobs that come out of it? Absolutely. But all the economists predict that we are going to go through a phase where, and until we come out on the other side of it, where there's going to be not only massive job loss, but people who can't get hired, they're going to have to retool or reskill, and they're not going to get hired at the rates that they were at. Like this is, I realize this sounds so doom and gloom, folks, but this is what people are looking at and already talking about 3, 5, whatever years out. So
mm,
yeah, I get like the short-term gain. It's like people are so happy about flexible work and remote work, but I can't help but look ahead and think about the impact it's going to have. And what you and I always talk about, and the whole reason we built Work It Daily, is that knowledge is power and knowledge can never be taken
right.
away from you. So the more informed you are and the more that you build out your area of expertise and know how to market that as a business of one, the more you can ensure you don't play the commodity game, you play the specialist game and you stay in demand. And that's what I
Mhm.
think not enough people are thinking about. And that's why, I love what we do,
Mhm.
right? Because we're in there
Mhm.
educating our members every day, which is empowering them to be the specialist, to be the standout candidate, and to be able to command the rates that they want. So for me, that's what I take away from that. I don't know, probably not what you were hoping for, but I have to think of it that way because I'm hearing about it in the executive level conversations.
I think that there's always a healthy balance when you talk about, a shout out or a cringe. It's one of those things where you have to always weigh, there's always two sides to a story, always.
Yeah,
And so when you
totally.
weigh those factors, it's again to your point, knowledge is power. You're
Yeah.
fueling now the fact that you know the business side of this and what this could potentially look like in your own personal journey. So I again always love to thank you for those insights because it is so important. And yes, remote work short term, and I hope for long-term game also because I know that there are other companies that are making it work. I do think that hybrid is going to turn into kind of a standard. Because also I just think that there's such a good thing about a team getting together and collaborating. I'm not arguing that point for sure.
Mental health
There's
too,
so
don't you
much that
think?
can be said.
I'm worried about
Yes.
the mental health of isolation. I think remote work is great,
Yes.
but for those people that don't have the other outlets, right? And I think
Exactly.
that comes kind of phases in your career, in your life too, right? So you have
Mhm.
a little one and you
Yeah.
have so many other things going on. Remote works for you. I'm now an empty
Mhm.
nester. And I
Yeah.
didn't wanna be cooped up all alone in an apartment all day long anymore, right? So it's so
Right.
nuanced by person and their situation, too, but, that's something I think people need to think about if they're fully remote. And I'm with you on, like, the getting together. I mean, I had a meeting you and I were talking, I had a meeting for 2 days this week with 3, like,
Mhm.
crazy brilliant people, and it was so beneficial to be together
Yeah.
versus all we had been doing numerous calls for 6 months virtually, but to be
Right. Coast
physically
to
together
coast.
was
Yeah.
transformational. It was transformational to be
Yeah.
together. So, I mean, these are fascinating things that you and I nerd out on, right? It's crazy. It's
Yeah.
and if on a little good news, if we transition that, like these people that like could lose their jobs from AI or however this works, let's
Mhm.
talk about the creator economy. It's celebrating its 25th
Yes.
year anniversary. Like, it's been around for 25 years, people creating content to earn a living, and they now say it's a
Mhm.
$250 billion industry. So, I mean, you can't tell me there aren't jobs there. There's
Mm-mm.
just it's so
Yeah.
cool that's what's become. I love that piece, and, if you search that, folks, it was in a piece I saw on LinkedIn, and it just blew my mind. There are so many people that's full-time job is YouTube creator.
Mhm.
Right? That is cool. I
Yeah.
love, like, and it further supports what we say all the time at Work It Daily, that you are a business of one. Right?
Mhm.
You can be a successful, thriving business of one if you've identified a market that needs what you're creating. And hello, creator economy. I love that. I love that.
Yeah, it's definitely exciting. I also think that the creator economy is so different, and I'm gonna probably age us a little bit, JT, so I apologize because we were here before the internet. And when you look at these opportunities, like, to our point, AI will create different types of jobs. As so did the internet. The internet
Yeah.
was like, oh, everything, the internet's just gonna tell us everything. It's like, well, no.
Yeah.
It's not all viable either, but the other piece of that is there's just always opportunity on the other side of something that's so forward thinking. And to this point, the creator economy is just it truly, knowing that where things started with the internet to now is just so exciting. And for anyone, literally anyone, I see, there's like little kids on YouTube doing like Minecraft stuff. Like, I'm like, good for them. Like, they're excited about something, and that's wonderful.
I remember a study came out a few years back, and they surveyed young kids and said, what do you want to be when you grow up? Right? Do you remember, like, I wanted to be a vet. And
Yep.
then, like, I got to see a surgery. A friend's dad was a vet, and he let me sit on surgery. I thought I was gonna pass out, and that was the end of me wanting to be a vet. But, it's so funny, right? But they asked kids, the number one thing kids wanted to be was a YouTube creator, and parents were like, "What is this world coming to? Oh my gosh." Well, guess what? It's $250 billion economy. Maybe your kid should get into it. So, it's just so interesting.
Just maybe.
Yeah. What did you wanna be when you grew up? Sidebar.
Yeah,
Do
for
you
sure.
remember?
When I was younger, I wanted to be a soccer player,
Oh, well, you were really
which is
good.
real now. So
Yeah. Again.
I don't know about really good. I was okay.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so now let's get into one. Like, you and I had such a deep discussion on this, folks. So I came across the fact that UPS, a United Postal Service, expanded an emergency daycare test. So they did a test, and they said, we have 10 eligible employees, and they partnered with this company and said, we're going to provide emergency daycare. Like, if something happens to your daycare, we don't want you to miss your shift. We want you to be able to work. So we're going to provide this for you. They've totally planned to expand it after, are you ready for this? In the time that they did it, it avoided 120 unplanned absences. So 120 times people would have otherwise called out sick because they didn't have childcare. They said employee turnover, but this is the one that blows my mind, went from 31%, meaning people who would have quit because they couldn't be consistent, they couldn't be at their job, it went from 31% to 4%. I mean, that,
Mind blowing.
like, how do you keep it a test? Why aren't you just rolling it out
There's
across
no
the country?
The test is
What more
over.
data do you need?
The test is complete. We're now running this.
Right? Like, and it really got you and I talking, because there are companies like Patagonia that have always offered on-site daycare.
Yes.
Have always, and this article also went on to say that Hormel, the chili company, etc.,
Mm.
they're building a 13,000 square foot childcare facility. It'll be ready next year. It's in Minnesota. It's costing them $5 million, but I bet that's a drop in the bucket to what they are going to get back in reduced turnover and missed days, right? It just, they have to know that.
Mhm.
I don't understand why more companies haven't figured this out and aren't, especially if you want people to come someplace physically, like you and I just talked about, right? If there's not remote work, uh, I mean,
Yeah.
my gosh, like that, if your jobs require a physical presence, there should be a daycare option. I just feel like that's a
Yeah.
given. But what do you think?
And I, like you said, our discussion was so robust. It was wild. I think the part that really the statistics speak for themselves. Like, that's crazy. The turnover rate alone. I think the other piece of this that really interests me is the fact that, statistically, we see that women are the ones that take the step away just because they're typically not the ones with the earning power, typically the male, if it's a heterosexual couple. But it is one of those things where you're giving the opportunity back to these, particularly women,
Yes.
that can now continue their career path without this disconnect. And then the other piece of this too is the reason that a daycare is so helpful for anyone is the daycare costs alone is also a reason people step away. And so if
Mhm.
you're saving this person from having to go out, buy this expensive program somewhere for their child, but you can offer an opportunity to where it's, hey, this is emergency, I really need someone to watch my child. It's extremely, it seems very extremely lucrative to me. It's just like you give this opportunity back to people again, for people to not have to explain a gap, not have to worry about the idea that they're going to have to leave their job if they don't want to. Like, it's a very real discussion, I think, from household to household on what this can do.
Yeah.
And this opportunity, I think, like you said, for larger companies, I can see mostly the ones taking this on because it is a little bit of a financial undertaking. It is. Why not? Because you're seeing it right here. Like, that statistic is incredible.
Yep.
If you want your top talent to stay, here's one avenue.
Right. And, our conversation went on so many tangents. One, which, by the way, folks, we were talking about for years. I've only known and gone to gyms that had childcare. Like, I became a
Yeah.
fitness instructor after I had my first kid because I got a free membership,
Yep.
and they had a childcare center, so I could go in and teach class and work out for a couple hours. And and you were like, "What do you mean I didn't know those?" Like, oh, and it was funny. You're like, "Where I was, they didn't have them." And we made
No.
a point, the $9 a month gym, or the
Right.
$19 a month gym is not going to offer daycare. Mine was only 49 bucks, but to some people, 49 bucks a month
Right.
is too much to pay for a gym. Now, I got mine free because I work there. But
There
so
you go.
you brought such a
Yeah.
great point, is how many women from a socioeconomic standpoint, like, if
Right.
that's a very clear example, like you talked about, if they couldn't even afford the $19 a month, and if your Y, like your local YMCA, didn't offer it,
Yep.
you weren't going to work out because you were working out at home, all isolated and alone, which we know for a fact that people
You're
tend
not
to
gonna
stick
do.
with fitness when they're in a group, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Than being alone. So,
Yep.
like, you look at that example and you think about the parallels to work. It just blows my
Mhm.
mind. And when I left corporate America, I left corporate America because it was the right thing to do. I had a big aha moment. And that's a whole story for another day. But also, when I started
Mhm.
working and started the company, it was all out of my house. I didn't have an office till both kids were back in school full time, right? Kindergarten.
Mhm.
And I had a homework room in every, office I had all through those years so that my kids could come back and be with me. But there
Mhm.
weren't jobs that were gonna allow me to do that. And that's one of the things that I think
No.
remote is so
Nope.
great. I'm so happy as a business that I can offer remote for my teammates because of that fact, because that stuff wasn't offered to me when I was
Mhm.
building my career. So, I don't know, I'm psyched about the UPS thing for sure.
Mm.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
All right, let's
It's a win in my book.
I agree. Yeah, super cool. Super cool. All right, so we'd love your feedback and thoughts on that as always, folks, but now we're gonna get into our woes to win. This is a good one, Dani. Let it rip, my friend.
All right. So, hey, JT and Dani, I love the new podcast. But I have a situation that I'd like you to discuss. We were recently required to come back to the office Tuesday through Thursday at my company. This is after we were told last year that we would actually stay remote. People are pretty upset about it. I actually am not. I missed having the structure and routine of going into an office. When I said this out loud recently, while several coworkers were complaining about being there, their response was shocking. They told me that I was being insensitive and that they didn't need me to reprimand them for their point of view. How was I reprimanding them? Number one. Why do they get to complain about the situation, but I don't get to say my thoughts on it? And I've noticed that a lot more of these types of microaggressions between workers, are happening since returning. Everyone takes offense to things that they never would have before. Is it just me, or has everyone become overly sensitive at work? I feel like people are defensive about everything. I no longer feel comfortable speaking at work for fear of backlash. How would you move forward with your relationships at work, or what advice would you give to someone who thought this way?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I do agree. I think, you and I have talked about this. There's post-traumatic stress injury, because I believe it can be cured. So
Mm,
PTSI, out of the pandemic. I just think people were isolated for so
yeah.
long. They all so what's happened is all they have is bad memories of being in the office. Having
Hmm.
to talk to Joe, who I can't stand, and having to do like people have just vilified the office environment as a way
Hmm.
to validate the need to stay home. And that is our human
Hmm.
nature, right? Confirmation bias. So people are
Yes.
creating this massive anxiety about going back to the office. Now, I do think it's
Hmm.
really not fair that this company said, "Hey, we're going to stay remote." And it's like, sorry. And as we know,
Mm,
some companies are doing that in order to avoid layoffs, right? They know people won't
right.
come back in. It's their way to cut down. But
Yeah.
not everybody can just quit a job because they don't want to go into the office anymore. So people are coming in and they're complaining. But
Hmm.
I agree with this person, people are sensitive. I mean, to say they were being reprimanded because the person was voicing that they were happy to be back, well, like, what's
Yeah.
that about? I mean,
Mm,
and I think that's what I mean, that's their own defensiveness, that own
mhm.
conflicting feeling that they've created for themselves, and I do worry about that. I don't want an environment where people are fearful of everything they say. That would be a horrible place
Mhm.
to have to work and go into physically for that matter. Um, for me, we always talk moment of accountability. I think when that
Yep.
person said to them, "Hey, don't reprimand me," I I think you do wanna say, "Oh my gosh, that was not my intent." I
Mhm.
literally you were sharing your perspective on it. I thought it was okay to share mine. I think being able
Mhm.
to respond in that moment, and so going forward, you kinda hope that that's what that person can do, right? Because like they said, "I'm afraid to talk anymore." Well, there's gonna be more of these instances. So that's your
Yeah.
opportunity to say, "That wasn't my intent. I thought it was okay for me to share my point of view. You know, you shared yours. I thought that was okay. It signaled for me to share mine." And you have to be careful how you say that too, because I think people get combative, right? Now you're being combative if you say that aggressively. So I believe there's a way to nuance that and say it in that
Mhm.
moment and get people more aware. But I do think we just have a lot of people that are really sensitive right now. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really tough topic. I think these are one of these conversations that I know for me, I'm believe it or not, not that eloquent. And it can be a hard thing to hear something where someone says, "Oh, you're reprimanding me." And to your point, JT, I mean, I would sit there and be like, I thought we were just sharing here.
Right. What?
And I tend to go with humor. Yeah, I tend to go with humor. And I know that that's not always appropriate, but it is a conversation that I don't understand the person thinking they're getting reprimanded for that. I think that the other piece of this is where we need to have a little less cancel culture in our conversations. Take perspective, folks. Put yourself in someone else's shoes. Does someone else need to be in the office to be social, to get out of the house? Is there something going on? Again, like you said, isolation. I very much can feel that. We have our days where we're like, I got to get to the coffee shop or something just to be around another human.
Yeah.
So it's like, I just think is taking a step back, taking a pause in terms of moment accountability. I really don't. I hope that people don't shut down. That just never turns into a culture of a good workplace.
Hmm.
Um, and so it is one of those things too, where depending on who's in that room at that time, is there a manager present? Even if it's an out of department manager, is there conversations as a company that we can start to have that address this in a way that's like, what are you comfortable with? What are you not comfortable with? Do we need to have a conversation about like I would say even communication. To your
Yeah.
point, the tone here is important, and it is one of those things where I would say, as we kind of talk about our communication quiz, it's one of those areas is like I'm an energizer, so I get excited about things a lot, but that can also be like a bulldozing effect for some people, where it's like relax, like chill out for a minute. And that's where things can get misconstrued a lot with the communication side of this. So, as someone who does look into this on a communication side, I would say the moment of accountability is definitely pointed out in the time if you can.
Yeah.
Is it always going to be, you're going to, I have those moments too where I'm like, oh my gosh, why didn't I say this? Or how come I couldn't mention this at the time when it came up? And if that is the case, if you are like that, I would say that even going back to that person at another time and being like, hey, again, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that I offended what how you think about coming into work. I really like seeing everybody. I really hope that, this doesn't deter our relationship, even on a working level. You got to at least have respect for your coworkers, people. You don't have to be best friends with them, but it
Right.
is also just taking an interest in the team.
Yeah. I know. First of all, I love that you brought up the cancel culture piece and that
Yeah.
everyone just needs to
Ugh.
take a breath here and really not assume the worst when they hear something. They always say the smartest people seek to understand. Right? They before
Yeah.
they ever make a comment, they truly try to seek to understand the other person's point of view. And they say that you sit in a much better position when you do. If you take
Mm.
real time to understand where the other person's coming from, you sit in
Mhm.
a better place to argue your point or whatever it is. But I also think it diffuses that reaction or that negativity.
Right.
I blame the employer for this though.
Mm.
You still go back to you said we could be remote. Now we're not. And these people were
True.
brought in. They're upset. I get it, and they're gonna have to
Yeah.
process their emotions around that, and they're bringing the whole rest of the
Mhm.
team down who is okay with being there. So that's on the company, that decision,
Yeah.
which can't do much for this
Yeah.
listener, unfortunately, but yeah, I think
No.
it'll be really interesting to see how this all plays out over time, and I just wanna go back to
Mm.
one other thing. You are an awesome communicator. You are I yeah, you are not allowed to play yourself down on that, by the way. I think you have, I love your energy, and I think that running a community makes you really dialed into how other people are seeing things. I mean, you have many of times pointed out to me an alternative way of looking at something or how a person's looking at something. So you have to
Well,
take that
I
back.
appreciate I appreciate it. Uh, I try to I can think again, we all try to realize where our weaknesses are. It's like
Yep.
I don't want to always, present myself in a way that's uncomfortable for someone else. So that's, again, having that greater understanding for the people around you. I am as a community manager very aware of of how my communication comes across, and I want to make sure that it's inclusive for those people to always feel like it's a safe space to talk to me. So that's
Yeah.
the other thing. I mean, to your point, understanding is, I mean, the majority of the battle. It's just like you don't know if someone, had to again leave their newborn at home, or if they had to
Exactly.
they got stuck on the
We don't
subway
know.
for 2 hours coming
Yep.
in. Like, you don't know.
Yep.
Ask the question. I think that's
It's
the best thing you can do, folks, is if you can ask the question to understand, to
seek to
understand,
understand.
because it's more power for you to gain that perspective
Right.
and just be there with that person in the time that they're just not okay at the moment. It'll come around.
Today's lesson, don't react, ask. Right? I think, like you
There you
said, seek
go.
to understand. I love that. It was awesome. This was a
I
good
think that's a
one.
great
I hope
point.
everyone else had as much fun as we did. Folks,
Yeah.
seriously, I hope you liked Revenge Career today. We're loving this. Don't forget your worst job. Seriously, it can become the launch pad for career success. We're trying to prove that with this app listen to me, this app. I'm app obsessed this week. With this podcast. So please, will you do us a favor? Probably not after that like the way I just butchered that, but if you did like today, could you go over and rate us? We'd love it if you rated us, gave us a comment. We're always into that. We'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, and as always, if you've got a story, guys, it needs to be shared. We've all been there. We've all had that disaster coworker, that crazy toxic culture, that situation that was just cringy. So we want to know the good, the bad, the ugly. If you want to share your story with us, we always present this in an anonymous way, so that way it doesn't come back to you or an employer or wherever it may be. So you can always fill out the form. It's in the description of the podcast, as well as just follow us on TikTok and LinkedIn. We want you to have as much knowledge as you possibly can, because again, JT said, knowledge is power, and no one can take that from you. So until next time, JT,
Yeah. You want to
it
win,
was great
folks.
to
You got
see
to
you
work it
today.
daily. Yeah. Come see Dani and I next time. Awesome. Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.